So social support and connection is really important for individuals who may be grieving because it helps to provide a really safe space for individuals to explore their grief journey, to express the emotions they're experiencing, to become aware that it's normal and okay for them to have any experience that they have, whether that's sadness, anger, shock, frustration.
One of the ways grief can influence us is by pulling away from connection with other people. It can be hard to see other folks out there happy and in love or feeling unencumbered by grief.
To give someone that social support really helps to normalize the experience, to validate what they're going through, and to give them a sense of permission to be able to be open with you and say how they're really feeling. So specific examples to be supportive and things to say to someone who is grieving, are especially around being really direct, being open, recognizing that the person who has lost someone is very likely thinking about that person. You being direct and saying, I'm sorry for your loss. This must be so hard. This sucks. This is awful.
And certainly in times of intense grief, we need to be around people who understand grief, who aren't asking us to be cheery and chipper and act like we haven't had that loss, or pretend like the thing we are grieving didn't happen. We really need people who can sit solidly beside us and be like, I get it.
Actively listening and validating someone who is grieving is really, really important. In doing this, it supports the person to know that they can share whatever experience is happening for them. They can express their grief in a way that may be very cathartic. Some people, when they're grieving, they move towards more cathartic releasing of grief. So that could be crying, that could be really expressing that from a place of emotional depth. Other people are a little bit more practical when they're grieving and may want to share just specific memories, things that they miss about the person they lost.
Invite them to spend some time together, to make a really specific offer. Hey, I can come over and clean your house Saturday afternoon. How would that be? It might look like including them in important holidays or with some regularity, a kind of check-in call Sunday mornings, and you're like, hey, I was just thinking about you today.
So there's a lot of misconceptions out there about grief and about people who are grieving. A really big one is there's no linear stage to grief. So we are not always moving through an exact, different moments of grief. We're not moving through shock, anger. These things can all be happening at the same time. And they can happen a little bit more at the beginning. They can taper off and then come back. So an important misconception around that is that grief is a short process. People grieve and then they move on. When in reality, when we're supporting someone, it can be helpful to acknowledge and give them the permission to experience any emotions that come with grief at any time. So another misconception or something to just think about when you're offering support to someone who's grieving is that it can be really helpful at times to share your memories of the person who died, share how that person impacted your life, and really kind of offering another glimpse of that person to the grieving person. This can be really helpful, and I would also suggest maybe not comparing this loss to another loss that you've experienced, giving space for that person to really know that you are there for them and supporting them with whatever they're going through.
Every person who has had a loss will have heard some of these platitudes, these comments that just rub us the wrong way. It's like time heals everything. The truth is that's not always the case. You may have heard, oh, it shouldn't be too bad. It's just so and so, X, Y, and Z. Or people will have heard, I can't believe you're still grieving. It's been over 6 months. People who have gone through a grief process will tell you who in their life helped them and who in their life made it more difficult. And that's sobering if you happen to be a friend or a family member of somebody who's grieving right now.
Offering to run errands for that person, offering to make a meal or send a meal to that person. It could be looking after their pets or their children to give them a little bit of time for themselves, time for them to engage in self-care, in just kind of getting back to those activities that help them. It can be a really important place for you to offer kind of some extra help in order for that person to have time and space for them to engage in self-care or to seek maybe some more professional therapeutic help, maybe support groups, maybe individual therapy. And by you just kind of normalizing that, validating that experience and saying that's okay and that's understandable, you're offering some support in those moments to show that person that it's okay if they need a little bit of extra help. We all need different levels of help at different moments of our life, and just being open about that with them may help them feel a little bit more confident and okay with taking that next step.
Prior to your loss, you might have loved poetry, and after your loss, poetry is just too painful. And so you end up spending a lot of time sitting by the lake or watching birds. It's okay that what soothed you before the grief doesn't soothe you after that loss. What we want is to be really in the moment. Who am I now? What helps me now?
So if you're feeling a little bit unsure about how to really support your friend or family member who is grieving, I would just really encourage you to go about it with a sense of compassion, of warmth, and sometimes even curiosity, right? I think a lot of times people are so afraid to say the wrong thing that maybe they don't say anything at all. And really just being open, not allowing your worries or your fears around this to kind of make that barrier between you and this person.
My advice is take the risk and say something. It will be good enough. It's okay if you're a bit uncomfortable. They're uncomfortable too. It's okay if you stumble over your words. They will hear the goodwill and the love that is what you are actually offering. You know, the words are just the package, but the thing you are offering is your heart, is your positive intention, is your goodwill, is your longing for this person that you love to feel held and supported.
Redbird Therapy.